Hello, podcast listeners. We know podcasts are a great way to catch up on a program that you may have missed on KSJE, and it's provided as a free service of this radio station. But KSJE is now listener-supported, and so while you enjoy this podcast, we hope that you'll also take some time to join KSJE. Become a member today. It's quite easy to do. Just go to our website at ksje.com/support and pick the level of support that best matches your budget. Thanks again for listening. Here's your podcast.
Welcome back to Right on Four Corners. I'm your host, DelSheree Gladden. I'm a journalist and editor and the author of 30 published novels. And on today's episode, I have Vicky Ramakka with me. This is a return visit, but first time I've had the chance to interview you. And we're going to be talking about your new book.
Thank you for inviting me to talk about my very newest novel, The Pearl Plot.
Before we jump in, you had an excerpt that you wanted to read. I just wanted to remind our listeners, your previous interview talks about your first book. Make sure to check that out if you'd like to hear more about the Cactus Plot.
Right.
So go ahead and share an excerpt with our readers.
I will read 2 or 3 of the beginning pages. Here we go. The Pearl Plot, Murder at the Old Homestead. Chapter 1, First Pearl. Millie, come here. I've found something. The excitement in Lydia's voice intrigued Millie. She walked to the corner of the orchard and followed the path that connected the orchard to the old abandoned cabin. Millie stepped through the door opening of the old homestead. The door had disappeared long ago. What did you find this time? Lydia used the hem of her t-shirt to rub dirt off a small object and held it up in the sunlight. An iridescent spark flashed from between Lydia's stubby, calloused fingers. It's round, like a bead, Lydia said. Look, there's a hole in each end, like a string would go through. It's a bead, that's what it is. Look at the way it shimmers. I think it's a pearl. Lydia dropped the pearl into Millie's hand. It was about the size of a fingernail and tapered slightly into an oblong shape. It's beautiful, almost glows, Millie said. How did it ever get here, buried in a pack rat nest? There's a story here, Lydia replied. I just know it. That's what you archaeologists do, right? Millie said. Figure out the stories of how people lived a long time ago. As project botanist, Millie's job was to identify the site's vegetation, both native and remnants of cultivated plants. The homestead was built in 1910 by Hispanic settlers who migrated from communities north of Santa Fe to unclaimed land in northwest New Mexico. The site had recently come under Bureau of Land Management care as part of a land swap with the homesteaders' descendants. Millie and Lydia were assigned to survey, record, and produce detailed documentation of the 160-acre parcel. If successful in representing its special features and cultural connections, their report would be used to nominate the homestead for the National Register of Historic Places. In the next chapter, Lydia and Millie go open the root cellar, which is next to the cabin. They find a desiccated human body. Turns out the body is that of a university professor who disappeared 30 years earlier. An autopsy shows the professor was murdered. Seems the professor was tracing a silver cross that early Hispanic settlers brought from Spain to Mexico and eventually north to Taos. In later chapters, we learn the story of how the professor ended up dead in the root cellar. But one morning, when Lydia and Millie arrive at the homestead, they find the cabin has been vandalized and hallucinogenic plant stolen. They realize their work at the cabin may be dangerous. From family stories, Millie learns the cabin was the site of another murder 100 years earlier. Millie uncovers the link between the two murders and how a beautiful pearl bead ended up in a pack rat's nest in the old homestead. The story is set in what I call Lejos Canyon in the book, but local folks may recognize it as Largo Canyon. Archaeologist Lydia and botanist Millie work for the BLM, so I've incorporated lots of tidbits about managing cultural resources and plants used by native populations, and I couldn't write about Largo Canyon without including the wonderful rock art found there. I believe we live in a unique, beautiful area. I wanted to incorporate the continuum that rock art reveals about human occupation in this region, stretching back for hundreds of generations.
Thank you for sharing the excerpt and giving us a general idea of the storyline. You really give a good all-around view. We're getting murder mystery, which everybody loves, I think.
That's the two first chapters, and there actually had been 2 murders at that homestead site.
Yeah.
And they were very entwined, but that comes in later chapters.
Yeah, we don't want to give too much away.
That's right.
But yeah, you open up right off the bat, grabbing people's attention with the first murder, which was really nice because me as a reader, it got me engaged right away.
Well, it's frightening what they found in the root cellar.
Yes. It gives you a good idea of the dangers of these families who went out to kind of the middle of nowhere to stake their claims and start a new life. It was a dangerous prospect.
It's a very remote area, and most homesteaders built some kind of a cabin, but had to preserve their own food and kept it in a root cellar.
So I thought it was neat that you get this blend of interesting storyline, but you actually provide a lot of information as well on the history of the area as well as the jobs that Millie and Lydia are performing.
Yeah. Where we live in northwest New Mexico is very interesting, with a large Hispanic population that came here mainly in the 1800s and settled in the area, and this follows a family story through.
Yeah, you really link quite a few generations in this when you start out with the original homesteaders and then bring in several new family members.
It's an important part of the history of northwest New Mexico.
It is. And one of the characters, Bailey, comes in.
Oh, yes.
She's kind of a side character, but she kind of surprises the reader with her interest in history. She's
a student that volunteers to help Millie and Lydia in the work at the homestead, documenting the work. And if there's enough interest there, they hope to make the site a National Historic Register, which would give it stronger protection.
And that's an interesting topic that you bring up in the story, that balance between tourism and kind of the adventuring side of things, taking groups out there to look at the rocks and the homestead with preservation.
That's often a long-time conflict on, I think at one of the sentences in there, I say, if people aren't allowed to see these sites, will they appreciate it and support preserving these very interesting archaeological cultural sites? But if too many tromp through some of these areas, it can be damaging to something like an old homestead. The initial couple that homesteaded there built the cabin and planted an orchard of fruit trees, and sometimes those really older heritage plants that have become very adapted to the climate here, they are very desirable for fruit growers to take pieces of. They're valuable and vulnerable to theft and taking cuttings for people to improve their own newer varieties. Some of those older varieties, the heritage plants, are highly sought after by today's gardeners.
I can imagine. I was talking to Bonnie and Andrew out at the extension office, And they were kind of telling me just the plans of the extension office and their new building and all that good stuff. And Andrew had happened to mention that through their orchard that they were doing, they had worked with the Montezuma Orchard Project to locate a really uncommon variety from the Cedar Hill area.
Some of those varieties were very hardy if they are still here. But they're important to cross with the newer varieties that may not be as vigorous, especially in our climate. Very, very cold winters, very hot summers.
And dry summers.
Any plants that were used by the homesteaders of 100 years ago, and if they're still alive and growing, they are of great interest.
Yeah, you brought that up, how these plants adapt over time. Just, any other species, they're going to figure out how to exist in their environment.
They die in the first bad winter. But if they've survived 50, 100 years, you can be pretty sure that's a good variety to grow in our backyards here.
Yeah, and I think this area is so hard to garden and just keep your grass alive, honestly. Having something that's actually suited for the area help keep it alive, but also cut down on water and how much.
Helps.
So with this series, you mentioned Millie works for the Bureau of Land Management. Where did that connection come from? I believe you have a personal interest and connection there.
Yes, my husband, Jim Ramakka, retired from the BLM, and so I hear a lot about BLM over the past years, especially the challenges of an agency doing land management for multiple use. And the first book, The Cactus Plot, the heroine is Millie, a botanist, and she finds an endangered species of a small, pretty little cactus. And people that collect cactus are real keen on getting samples of every species they can. And a lot of people who've read that book tell me they learned a lot about how the Bureau of Land Management works and about plants, native vegetation in our area. An interesting comment which really surprised me, a man, I think retired from Los Alamos or something, and he said, I never realized that plants can be endangered too. He'd always thought it was animals, but oh yes. And Millie, in the first book, finds a location where this very rare little cactus grows and gets beat up pretty bad by a man that wants to dig them up and sell them, which doesn't do this rare little cactus any good at all. It can wipe them out.
Yeah. It brings a lot of awareness to what exactly the BLM does.
Many people have told me that they learned more about how BLM can manage.
Well, and it's interesting, I think, because if you don't live in the West, you don't deal with that. It's not as common of an agency.
Public land is an unknown concept to many people on the East Coast, but we sometimes take it for granted. But the Bureau of Land Management's role is to identify rare plants and animals and protect them, keep them with us, but also archaeological ruins. That's a big part of BLM's mission, to protect archaeological sites.
And we have a lot of areas just in the Four Corners region where the BLM manages and has stewardship over a lot of sites. And you probably...
This area is rich
in
archaeological resources, but wonderful rock art, petroglyphs, and mainly our sandstone canyons around here have beautiful pictures and beautiful carvings. Sometimes religious, sometimes ceremonial, sometimes implying this is a place we can find water or something interesting happening. But I have visited the petroglyph part, which is a little north of Albuquerque. And that area is just kind of scratchings into a black volcano surface. But what has been chipped for rock art in the beautiful sandstone canyon walls we have around here, to me is fascinating. San Juan College offers a number of courses that takes field trips out to Largo Canyon, and it's a very special area.
It is, and I think it's one that doesn't come up on people's radar as often as some of the bigger sites.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Rock art often has handprints or symbols for an early clan, perhaps, maybe like a mountain lion. And some people just can't resist thinking they should add their name to it. And that is defacement. And it's a really terrible thing because it can obliterate these remnants of our very ancient peoples that were in this area maybe 1,000 years ago. So it's an important thing to enjoy, visit, and protect.
Mm-hmm.
And we're lucky in this area to have that kind of a resource right in our backyard.
Absolutely. I appreciate that your books bring some awareness to how to respect the site and interact with it without causing any damage.
Nothing makes me happier than when someone says they learned something from my books.
Mm-hmm.
And this one, a friend commented that she learned a lot about cultural resources and management from parts of the book. So Lydia is the archaeologist in the book, and she's a very outgoing person and likes to tell everybody about what she's doing.
She's a fun character. I enjoyed getting to know her a lot.
Yeah. I like Lydia, too. She is. She's a real character.
Yeah, they played off each other really nicely, which was fun to see that interaction.
They worked together, but on occasion, two women working way out in those remote areas can be kind of scary sometimes when strangers show up and who knows. And it turns out this homestead where they're working, one person comes by and tells them, "Oh, you know this cabin is haunted, don't you?" And they said, no, that's silly. No such thing as haunting. But in fact, there had been a murder of the woman of the couple who built the cabin in the first place. And she was killed in a gruesome way 100 years ago. And that led to some rumors around that it's haunted. And Millie pays no thought to that kind of thing. But later, when they discover the professor in the root cellar, it's a little too much coincidence. The same place. Two really grisly, nasty murders. And they kind of deal with that.
Yeah, it really sets them on the path to start, not necessarily at first jumping in to investigate it themselves. They do let the law enforcement agent start that, but I think once they're mixed up in it, it kind of becomes hard to not be involved in some way.
Yeah, they don't want to be involved in a murder investigations. Millie just wants to work on the plants, and Lydia takes her work very seriously in documenting the cabin, because if a place meets the criteria to be declared a National Historic Site, which I think many places in Largo Canyon could qualify for that. So if their work is successful, it would bring more protection to the homestead and the plants and the rock art that's right around on that 160-acre parcel.
It's neat to show that process of how that comes into play. It's not just, someone discovers something and then it's like, oh, this is historic. Boom, it's preserved now.
Yeah.
Like, there's really a detailed process to get that done.
Yes. And one day, Millie and Lydia show up at the site and they find some spray can paint on the outhouse. But somebody over the weekend had put some spray paint on the door. And that was kind of scary. Are there other people out there that don't want them working there? So the BLM law enforcement officer gets pretty involved and drives by often to check things out, but they just really don't want a third murder. The very first homesteader was murdered, and the university professor was kind of doing the same work. He was looking into the cabin and researching kind of same work that Millie and Lydia are doing. And none of them wanted a third murder to be happening right there at that site.
Third time's the charm, or bad things come in three.
It
like to avoid
for those
both
individuals. So
yes,
so it was pretty dicey what they're doing there. If they could keep going back after the vandalism, the destruction, which is actually federal property, and it's against the law. And the law enforcement officer really had to look into that.
And that's something I think probably a lot of people also don't consider going into these sites, that if you disturb things, if you're not respectful of it, it could lead to some pretty serious consequences for the individual if they're discovered.
Very serious consequences.
Hopefully people will behave as they visit.
Right.
Be respectful of those areas. And
respectful, and that's the right word.
I hope that's something that people take away from these stories.
Yeah, many people who have read the Cactus Plot, which came out 4 years ago, with the same characters, book is going to be made into an audiobook, which was very exciting to me. Sometime before Christmas, my publisher, sent me an email that he's considering doing an audiobook out of the Cactus Plot. I never imagined that could happen to a book that I wrote, but it was quite a process. And I think people around here especially like audiobooks and the distances we travel.
Yes, definitely have to drive a bit here.
That was a learning curve to be involved with how an audiobook is produced. So the company that is doing it, they are based in Portland, Oregon. So they sent me 12 audition tapes with 12 different voices and maybe 5 to 10 minutes reading out of the Cactus Plot. And I had to choose one. So the process is this narrator, Maria was her name, she would read one chapter of the book, and they sent it to me, and I listened to it over and over and did edits. That is, if there was a skip, or especially for mispronunciations. And there's a lot of local pronunciation around here that this poor narrator, Maria, she read the Bisti, but locally we say the Bisti. And oh my goodness, some of the plant names, she had a lot of trouble with. Cholla cacti, the small cactus that Millie discovered was Scolerocactus sanjuanensis. And a lot of vocabulary I, in fact, tried to spell out phonetically. And then I also did a small recording of myself saying the words what to me are correct, such as I could play just a couple minutes from this narrator. This is chapter 8 in the Cactus Plot. And Millie is out in Largo Canyon somewhere, and she's on the edge of a canyon.
A blood-curdling screech fractured the silence. Millie clamped both hands over her ears. She looked skyward, then ducked. A shadow slid across her left shoulder. A great black bird glided to a nearby branch, almost at eye level. "Raven, did you have to scare me like that?" Millie scolded, and returned the raven's probing stare. The raven gave another ear-splitting scream. Millie called back with a line of Poe's memorable poem. "Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary." Tilting its head, listening, the raven called again, this time more softly. "I didn't bring enough lunch for you, Raven, but I'm glad to have your company." Chuckling, balancing forward and back, the raven tipped its head sideways, focused on the foil yogurt cover. Their vocal exchanges continued. The bird hopped closer. At the sound of crashing branches, the raven swooped, snatched the shiny foil, and dropped from sight over the canyon's edge. Millie stood, not knowing what could make that much noise in the bushes. A human form stepped into the clearing. She could see and smell a sweaty young man. He gave a wave in her direction and bent down, swinging long black hair over his face. He brushed the top of his head, scattering bits of juniper bark and needles. Between deep breaths, he puffed out, "My grandmother talks to ravens all the time."
So the audiobook for the Cactus Plot will be released September 12th. And if people are interested in hard copies of the Cactus Plot or the Pearl Plot, they are both available at Amy's Bookcase here in Farmington on San Juan Boulevard. And in fact, I'll be signing books at Amy's July 22nd. Okay. And for Durango folks, Maria's bookstore also carries the Pearl Plot and the Cactus Plot. And I have left some print copies at Artifacts and Feet of Clay.
So nice to have some local stores who are willing to support the author community here.
Yes. They are available on Amazon, but much, much better to go to Amy's Bookcase. She is the friendliest person and has the neatest bookstore. Oh, if anybody who is a reader goes into that store, I guarantee they will not come out empty-handed.
Yeah, true.
It's a wonderful place to find books of all kinds for a good price.
Mm-hmm.
And whether the Pearl Plot becomes an audiobook someday, we will just wait and see. I will be better prepared for that. I know that I'll need to do a pronunciation guide because there's quite a lot of Spanish mixed in. Given the homestead was built by Hispanic settlers, I especially used some Spanish in tracking down the pearl and why that showed up in a pack rat's nest in that old homestead way out in Lejos Canyon. It's a thrill to see my book, the first real copy of it, instead of a handful of separate typewritten papers. So it's really, really fun when they first come to me, the print copies, and taking them out and seeing what it really looks like. And it's a very satisfying thing to think people are reading my book. The Cactus Plot has sold in more than 15,000 copies. That book is doing very well. And I really am happy to see the reviews on Amazon, especially when people say they learned a lot. If anyone is in a book club that may be listening to this, I do have a reader's guide with about a dozen questions for both of these books.
Nice.
Because again, I've gotten so many comments like, I really learned a lot from your book. Again, I will be signing books at Amy's Bookcase here in Farmington on July 22nd. And then I will be at Maria's on Saturday, July 22nd, too, doing their Author in the Parkland. And both of these bookstores are just wonderful at supporting local writers.
They are. And where can people find you online?
Online would be at my website, VR Writing.
Was that one a .net or a .com? I'm trying to... Okay.
That's it.
I'm trying to remember.
I'm thinking hard here. Yes.
It's hard when there's a microphone in your face.
VRWriting.net.
All right. Well, we are about out of time, so I just wanted to remind our listeners, check out both the Cactus Plot and the Pearl Plot.
Great.
And check out the signings if you're in the area, and you can meet Vicky and ask any questions you might have about the books.
The Cactus Plot is a really good book to read before exploring Largo Canyon, I think. I think you'd pick up a lot of information on what's happening in Largo Canyon.
Yeah.
So I also want to thank the station for supporting our local writers as well. Let people know that we have so many good writers putting out very interesting books right here in the Four Corners.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun to get to know more, especially outside of the San Juan County area where I do know a lot of you here, but get to expand and more topics and people.
We appreciate it, DelSheree, and we appreciate this station for showcasing local talent
Mm-hmm.
Or at least this writer. I won't put myself in a talent category.
Well, Vicky, thank you for taking the time to come chat with me today about the audiobook and the new book. And it's really good to learn more.
Thank you very much.
Did you enjoy that podcast? We hope that you did. And if you did, share it with your friends. And if you really want to keep podcasts like this coming, please support KSJE. You can do it easily online at ksje.com.